Oops. Now, lecture 4 is about division of power. It's just like what we talked about just now. Can you see the full screen? Oh, yes. All right. Okay. Lecture 4 is about divisions of power, and we're going to talk about intergovernmental conflicts. I'll explain what it is, and then we look into three typologies of state, looking at how decentralized power is. So that's unitary states, federations, and confederation, and also explain to you why this is less useful today. We'll then focus on federalism, and sovereignty is vested in both federation and the state, and this bring us to the idea, the concept of self-rule and share rule. And fourthly, decentralization has different dimension: administrative, legislative, fiscal, and judicial, and different level: deconcentration, delegations, devolution. And we discuss about the relationship between decentralization and separatism. And finally, we look at decentralization's, the impact of decentralization to SDG. So, what is intergovernmental? Yes.
I think it's not full screen, the slides.
Oh, it's not full screen.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. Let me see just now. Slideshow. Is it layout? No.
I think it should be at the bottom right before the Zoom.
Bottom right.
Slideshow.
Presentation view.
Presentation view. Bottom right. Just a moment.
Before the minus symbol.
Before the?
For the minus symbol.
Oh, I see. Okay, presentation view. Presentation view. Weird. I have docs, notes, whiteboard, live stream. Let me try this. Just now, you won't sort it out for me, but that was for lecture 3. Does anyone know how to resolve this? I cannot find what you say. Oh, the view. Okay. But this is speaker. No, this is different.
I think it's at the bottom before there's an 82% and then plus, minus, and then the next icon.
82%. It doesn't show here on my side though. Let me try. If not, then I'll call Ewan. Ewan just now explained to me. I forgot how. Is it slideshow? Any change? No. No changes, right? I'm trying it on my PowerPoint. I'm not sure that this is the place or.
Hi, Prof. Maybe you can go to the slideshow
Yeah.
at the top. Yeah, you can.
You mean on Zoom or on my PowerPoint?
On your PowerPoint, yes.
On my PowerPoint?
Yes. At the top, there's a slideshow. Yes.
Yes.
Not this one. Yeah. Yes. Now it's okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Okay. So I'll go back to this. I'll go straight into the main point. What is intergovernmental conflict? When we start, just assume at the beginning we have only one state. But if this state actually expand, then it's going to have subdivision like provinces and so on, right? Now, should all the subdivisions of the government just follow the national government, or they should have a bit of room to do what they want to do? Now, if they have some room to do what they want to do, then you could have intergovernmental conflicts, especially if you have different parties are in charge. So what we are looking at is that should different aspiration be manifested at different levels of politics, the different layers of government, or should they be one? This partly go back to whether you have one-party system or multi-party system, but also the other way is how is division of powers structured? On the left here is what we call a unitary system, where the state governments are just branches of national government. So you could have different parties in power, but the national governments have an overarching power that can correct the state governments and so on. So if you go on this case, then intergovernmental conflict would be very little. On the other hand, if you go to the right, you see confederation. So the people here invest the sovereignty into state government, and then only then the state government form a national government, pass some power to the national government. In reality today, we do not have a confederation at the nation state level. The closest we can draw from is probably the European Union. That's a supranational body. But you can think of it as a confederation because it has 27 member states, and every member state still have their national government. And between the national government and the EU establishment, the national government is much more powerful. So that's confederation. Federal system invests their sovereignty in both the national and the state government. So they have to share. And this is where you would often have intergovernmental conflict, because that confederation would have the same thing, but over here, because for nation state, we basically have unitary system and federal system. So federal system should be more prone to have intergovernmental conflicts. However, this was the conventional typology. Today's world, you cannot use unitary system or federal system to predict how decentralized powers is in a country. You can't do this. You can't tell unitary systems always would be more centralized and federal system always more decentralized. I'll show you example. The first is UK. UK is a unitary state, but UK has embarked on devolution. So power has gone to Scotland, which has its own parliament, and in 2014 even ran a referendum on Scottish independence. And power has also been devolved to a lesser extent to Wales and Northern Ireland. Both have their own legislative assembly. So this is United Kingdom, a unitary state, but they have devolution. And in the case of Scotland, definitely has gone through way beyond any states in Malaysia we have. even though we are a federation. The next example is actually Indonesia. Indonesia is officially a unitary state. Indonesia doesn't like the idea of federalism, partly because in the early years of independence, there was two entities. One is Republic of Indonesia. The other one is United States of Indonesia. And United States of Indonesia is much more pro-Dutch. And it's over several years that Indonesia get united. And this independence or decolonization struggle leave a very strong imprint in the mind and the hearts of Indonesian political elites. They believe in a centralized states. But during the 32 years, and Aisha, please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm an outsider. My knowledge is based on my reading, not necessarily be accurate. But during that 32 years of Suharto rule, the centralized control of Jakarta has caused some resistance at the local level. So after democratization in 1998, Indonesia had to embark on decentralization. They first let East Timor go independent, and they settled a deal with Aceh later for a special autonomy. But they also went through nationwide decentralization to reduce the incentive for separatism. That's included in Papua and potentially maybe in Maluku and so on. They managed to do this, and Indonesia did it very smartly. They did it at two levels. Power was dissolved from the center to the provinces. How many provinces we have in Indonesia? 32 or more?
35 right now.
35, right. Okay. So power was devolved into to the 35 provinces. And furthermore, every province consists of multiple regency or kabupaten. So you have hundreds of kabupaten, and the power also went down. Now, why this is so? Partly because Indonesia is very vast, and even within a province could have very different groups. So devolving it to kabupaten level would address the local aspiration better. But also there's another calculation. If you devolve the power to the provincial leaders, some of them may become a local strongman and they fight for their independence. But you devolve the power further down to the next layer, a provincial strongman wouldn't be able to take that province out of Indonesia unless he get the support of all the kabupaten leaders. So that makes it more difficult. But the point I want to make here is that Indonesia today is much more decentralized than Malaysia. And this is Malaysia. Why is Malaysia so centralized? And Kahan, you're from Sabah. Are you happy with how much power that Sabah enjoys currently?
Not really.
Okay, could you tell us more?
Well, Sabah and Sarawak, we joined Peninsula Malaysia to form Malaysia, basically. So there is the Malaysia Agreement. And basically for Sabah and Sarawak, we think that we are region, we are not the state. And we have a huge, majority of us are indigenous people. So there are also indigenous people's rights that are strongly bind to that agreement.
Go on.
I think for Sabah is that at the moment we don't see strong head. So they are like no directions. So they just want to hold the power, and once they have the power, they have a lot of factors that affect their decisions.
Right.
So
Would you think that Sabahan should just vote for Sabah-based party?
no, actually, I don't think so, because until and unless we see a very strong Sabahan party who can really lead Sabah on their own way and fight for the rights, and very very clear directions on the future for Sabah, but I don't see that yet now. So I do believe that I will actually still agree to any party who has that vision, rather than just supporting Sabahan because it's Sabahan.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, the issue with centralized federalism in Malaysia has two parts of the problem. What Kahan has just described is how East Malaysians look at it. I want to start with the original problem in Semenanjung, in the peninsula here. The states here have even lesser power than Sabah and Sarawak. Why? If you think about federalism, the whole idea is to allow states to have more room to explore, to compete, to try out what they want, to meet their local aspiration. Why was Malaya so centralized despite being a federation? This has to go back to 1946, when the British returned to Malaya and they merged all the states except Singapore into one single colony that's called Malayan Union. Out of the 11 states there, 9 of them were previously protectorates. So they get downgraded from protectorates, British protectorate, to outright colonies. This was one reason why the Malays were very angry, but there is a stronger second reason. It's because Malayan Union, despite being a unitary state, on its citizenship policy was very liberal. It would allow the Chinese and the Indians to become citizens. And so, because of the strong objections from the Malays, who then formed UMNO in 1946, the Malayan Union was abolished by end of January 1948. Lasted only 22 months. And this was replaced by Federations of Malaya. Now, you could see that because Malayan Union was a unitary state, so Federation of Malaya is the opposite. But because Federation of Malaya is a product of Malay nationalism, they do not want the state to have too much power. They want Malays to be united and Malay states to have lesser power, shift that power to the center. So despite officially a federation, it retains much of the unitary centralized structures of Malayan Union. This is how we started off. In 1963, in a negotiation to form Malaysia, there were proposals for Malaysia to have a new constitution, but we rushed to get that federation done. So we basically just adopted Malaya's federal constitution to be Malaysia's federal constitution. And with the exception that Singapore, Sarawak, and Sabah were given more power. So the issue is actually the centralization is not only felt by Semenanjung, but Sabah and Sarawak feel very strongly, partly because when Malaysia was formed, they were sold that this is going to be federations of 4 equal partners, but we are not a confederation. So what actually happened is that Malaysia should be formally recognized as an asymmetric federation. Asymmetric means that not all the states are equal. Some have more and others have less. So This was never done. And MA63 is actually very limited. A better deal for Malaysia should actually treat MA63 as the floor, not the ceiling. And but to get all this thing done, Sabah and Sarawak actually need to get the 11 Malayan states to come together, because these states want more power as well. But so far, Sabah and Sarawak have been treating Malaya as a bloc, and they are represented by the federation, by the federal government. And when the federal government, when Malayans have nothing much to gain from decentralization, of course, there's not much strong incentive for the federal government to give more to Sabah and Sarawak, because they fear they will lose power and they may even get punished by Malayan voters. So that's the situation we are in. Now, what I want to show you now is actually why I say the typology no longer works. Here I show to you 3 federations and 2 unitary states: Australia, Malaysia, Germany, Indonesia, and UK. And we look at how the powers were allocated or divided between different layers of government. Some of them would be similar. Defense, all countries would leave it at the hand of national government. If you look the second last two, the last second and last third, natural resources on land and local governments, all of them would actually leave it to the local government. But in between them, you would have since very different system. Malaysia, for example, is the only one that keep education entirely in the hands of the federal government. Now, this is being changed now, not through the constitution, but through administrative concession. Sarawak is claiming the power of on educations now, but this is not protected in the federal constitution, which means you have a new federal government, Sarawak powers may be rolled back, or that could be used as part of the conditions in negotiation. So you can look at the others that there's not a federal a standard pattern, but you could tell, for example, that when you come to police, UK, the unitary state, is the most decentralized one, because Scotland and Northern Ireland control their police, and in England and Wales, police are controlled by local government. So now we go to federalism. Historical context for creations of federations, you have at least 4. One is unity against external threat. So this is basically saying that you have the entity that comes together. So confederations of Switzerland, which is a federation today, United States of America. Second is colonial administrations or decolonizations, arrangement, Malaysia, Australia, India, at one point, the federations of the West Indies in the Caribbean Sea. And sometimes it's conflict settlement. Nigeria had a bloody civil war in the 70s. After that, they divide their country into over 20 provinces to basically change the patterns of power configuration. And they have enjoyed peace since then. And we also later look at a country called Bosnia-Herzegovina in the Balkan Peninsula in southeastern Europe. Finally, sometimes it could be inclusion in multinational states empire, like Soviet Union, Yugoslavia, and India. We look into them as well. What is important to remember in the federalism is that there's 2 elements: self-rule and share rule. Self-rule means autonomy. There are things that only the states or the provinces should do for themselves. But there's also other part that you have to have joint decision making. And so, for example, you have an upper house to represent states and provincial interests. In countries like America and Australia, Germany, The upper house are completely consists of state representative. In Malaysia, unfortunately, the states only control 26 out of 70 seats. The rest are federal appointees. And you could also have National Council with state representation. The second thing I want you to remember is about overrepresentation of small and special states. Each constituent unit is considered an entity of their own. You cannot say, for example, Selangor has maybe 10 times population than Perlis, therefore Perlis is only 1/3 of a state. So you need to have this equality regardless of population at one level. But on the other level, you have to still respect the political equality of citizens in democracy. Because remember what we talked about in the first lecture, a second lecture about politically equal. So how do we deal with this? And one way to deal with overrepresentations of small or special states, with the case of Sabah and Sarawak, is that we should give them power in the upper house. Upper house could be the house to defend state rights. You can have overrepresentations of small and special states, as we talked about. And ultimately, if small states and large states have the same number of power, this is overrepresentation. For example, in America, California has 2 seats in the upper house, and Rhode Island, Wyoming, all the small states have only 1. Oh, they only also 2. So that means the small states are overrepresented. This gives the state some bargaining power to force deliberations and compromises. While lower house, it should be about citizen power. We have to talk about political equality. One person, one vote, one value. This is a house that elect government. If you want to make a comparison between the 2 chambers, not all countries have 2 chambers. Singapore, for example, has only 1 chamber, the lower house. They don't have an upper house. If we have 2 chambers, the purpose is for the lower house to decide the directions of government, starting from electing government. It is comparable to the fuel in your car. You press the accelerator, so the car would move, and the upper house is your brake. So this is why we want to give overrepresentation in the upper house. Now, let's look at decentralization. When we talk about federalism, federation, confederations, unitary state, we are talking about typology. Decentralization is a process towards more power for the lower level of government, subnational government. And how far should we have it? If you do not have, if your country is too small, like city states like Singapore, or micro states, let's say Seychelles Island, then you would not have subnational government. But if you have the country, the larger or more diverse the country is, then the stronger demand for decentralization, because people are different. Just like Malaysia, Sabah and Sarawak are much diverse than Semenanjung. Therefore, they see themselves as country within Malaysia, and they ask for this more than the Malayan states are demanding. So how much power would go to the subnational government? We have to ask where's the starting point. For federation, just now I have discussed a little bit, and what is the historical context, like what I have mentioned about Indonesia. Now we're going down to conceptually think about centralization or decentralization. Which direction should you go? We basically have to decide on 2 balance. One is about homogeneity. Do you want national integrations, or you want to have more diversity? So that's one dimension. The other dimension is that equity. Do you want more equity between the states? In that case, you have to suppress the stronger states, reallocate their resources to the poorer one, or you want to encourage competition so everyone become more dynamic. Now, what's the right balance? That is up to every country to decide. In striking all this balance, there will be trade-offs between efficiency. If you want to transfer, for example, education from the federal to the state, would it be more efficient? What about representation, which would be more effective for people to participate in deciding what they want? And can they be responsive to the needs of the people? And thirdly, it's about equity and that's mean accessibility and inclusion. Now, I show you two maps for America because this is one of the most decentralized states in many ways. At least before Trump. The first one show you death penalties in the United States. So you could see a minority of states has done away with death penalty. Majority of them still have, and you have two of them having the death penalties, having a moratorium on death penalty imposed by the governor. And below it shows you if you are a pregnant woman, what's the allowable length in your pregnancy for abortion. This is before the overturning of Roe and Wade in 2022. And you could see some of the states are more liberal. If they go up to 25 plus weeks, that's Virginia, that's most liberal. And some, even more than that, has no limit, Oregon, Colorado, New Mexico, Alaska, and a few states in the Northeast. So what it means is that if you have variations in policies and laws, people can actually migrate to place where they want. So for example, you feel that death penalties can give you more security, then you migrate from a state without death penalty to one with. On the other hand, you think that this death penalty is so barbaric and you do not want to live with a state with death penalty, you can then move to a more civilized state without. Decentralizations have different aspects. Administrative means who is carrying out the duty or who is administering it. Legislative means power to regulate. Fiscal means money to spend to carry out that the government function. Judicial means that power to judge. Now, fiscal decentralization is something very important because if you do not give your provinces or your states money, how can they actually perform? Indonesia is a good example. Aisha shared with us that I understand that some of the income tax in Indonesia would go to the provinces and kabupaten, right?
Yes, some of it. Also, currently, if I may add, Prof,
Yes.
we have this PI participation interest. So from the oil and gas part, we have to include the government, the local government. The I'm trying to find the correct word. So
If you want to use Indonesian, it's fine.
yeah, so the policy gives the regional governments, the province, through the local owned enterprise, 10% ownership take in oil and gas working area. So it's also part of the income for the regional.
Thank you very much. If you have anything, please share in the group so that more students, especially those in track 1, can learn from you as well. Now, judicial decentralization means that you could have different courts for different level of government. in Malaysia, even though we have high court at the state level, they are actually extensions of the federal judicial system. We don't have a separate judicial system under common laws, but we do have two-state judicial system. Can anyone tell me in Malaysia? Anyone? Saifuddin? One is the Sharia court.
Sure, okay, yeah.
That's state-based. The other one, Kahan,
Is the Mahkamah Anak Negeri law?
it's exactly native courts. That's only in Sabah and Sarawak. So, but we do not have something in civil court. If you compare this with America, they have it. They have their federal Supreme Court. They have their state Supreme Court, and so on, and different sets of judges, different sets of law, and certain cases only go to federal court, certain go to state courts, and so on. Now, when we talk about decentralization, meaning that we transfer power from the national government downwards. Now, that could happen in different level. For example, if the transfer of power only reaches branches of the central government, that's called deconcentration. For example, in Malaysia, let's say our education is entirely federal, except now de facto in Sarawak. And so every state, you have a state education department. And if the education ministry decide to transfer some of the power to the state education department, then it's called deconcentration. But remember, the state education department, they are not part of the state government. So this is a key point. They're still under federal control, but they have more local responsiveness and participation. The other level of, another level of decentralization is called delegation. This is transfer of power to semi-autonomous authorities like school district. School district is entity in America where they govern a school within an area. So a state would be divided to several school districts, multiple school districts. But school district is neither part of the federal government nor part of the state government. Compare this with devolution. That's mean transfer of power to subnational government. So what's the difference between delegation and devolution? In the case of devolutions, the state government or subnational governments have the power to coordinate between different policy domains. So that allows states to develop something, and it allows intergovernmental conflict. So that's the difference. Is this good for environment? So subnational government may actually play an important part. And this is examples on decarbonization. And when the national government may not be keen, but state government may be keen, because this is during Trump first term. Sorry. Yes, this is during Trump first term. We look at separatism and intergovernmental conflicts. This is a thorny issue for many politicians. They fear that if you have decentralization, it may actually fuel or encourage further call for separatism. Separatism means taking out part of the country to be an independent state. On both sides of both pictures here is a country called Spain. Now, Spain has many regions. Spain started off as a unitary state, but today it looks more like a federation. On the left-hand side is a country called Basque Country. It's a very tiny region. They speak a language that's completely different from their neighbors. This is sandwiched between France and Spain. During General Franco's time, this was a dictator. Spain was highly centralized, and regional language and culture was suppressed. The Basque people fought this with terrorism. Decades after democratization and decentralizations, the Basque people, the Basque terrorists lay down their arm. They lost support and they saw no reason to continue. On the right-hand side is Catalonia. You may know its the capital that's more famous, Barcelona. So Catalonia is the richer parts of Spain. They want an independence because they think they have been subsidizing their poorer cousin. Decentralization did not put off the fire for Catalonia. Catalonia still want more power, but of course they did not fight it in violent means, and the struggle is still ongoing. Next, let's look at India. India is very interesting. On the left is a map in 1956. On the right is 2019. You can see the state boundary has been redrawn and many new states has emerged. Why? This is because that in India, the current trend is to create language-based states. Sorry, this is to create language-based states. In other words, the divisions are linguistically organized. Can anyone tell me why? Anyone to try? Anyone to try? The reason is that in India, even within the same state, you could have minority groups that speak different minority language. If you can carve out a new state and a minority in a larger state now become the majority in a smaller state, these ethnic groups can actually influence decisions in public sector employment. To put it in very simple terms, when you have a state based on your regional language, you have a better chance to be civil servant. So that's one of the reasons that you see things are changing. People want to organize it, not just because that they love their language, but also it has huge economic implications. So the interesting things is, with the exceptions of the Sikh and the Kashmiri, most separatists in India only demand separation from a larger state rather than from the union itself. Other countries, other multinational states or empires may not be so lucky. Take a look at Soviet Union. In 1984, Soviet Union has 15 states. Like our provinces or states, they have 15 Soviet Republic. And today, all the 15s have become independent states. And Yugoslavia is another story, but the breakout of Yugoslavia is much more bloody. And that shows that's why sometimes multinational states is not easy to hold together. It used to have 6 republics and 2 autonomous provinces under Serbia. Serbia is here. So Serbia is a dominant country. And today, except Vojvodina and Serbia still stay together as Serbia, everyone else is an independent country, including Kosovo. Among this country, this is called Bosnia-Herzegovina. Bosnia-Herzegovina has 3 main ethnic groups: Serbs, Croat, and the Bosniak themselves. The Bosniaks are Muslim. Serbs are Orthodox Christian, and Croats are Catholic Christian. So when the country break up, and Serbia and Croatia and Bosnia all want to fight to keep them, especially Serbia was very aggressive. So the outcome is ethnic cleansing. No one is really good guy, but the worst was Serbia. They committed a lot of ethnic cleansing against the Croats and also the Bosnia. So the international arrangement is to make sure that Bosnia would not be separated. But since they have had such a bloody war, it's hard for them to work together. So this is an interesting arrangement. This Bosnia and Herzegovina here became two-part. Those area occupied by the Serbs is called Republic of Srpska. And the color parts, this make up of the Bosnia and Herzegovina Federation for the Bosnia and the Croats. Now, like Soviet Union, Yugoslavia, China fear itself would become like at least Soviet Union, because it has a large numbers of minority area, Inner Mongolia, Xinjiang, Tibet. Guangxi not so much a problem. This was also Manchurian, but they are now basically the native groups here is Manchurian, but they are now basically way overpopulated and assimilated by the Hans. So the main problem is this trade. And Taiwan, China also has Taiwan, which has not come into its control. And Hong Kong and Macau, former colonies of British and Portuguese, which have returned to China. So China has a fear for this intergovernmental conflict because partly China is a communist one-party state. They don't believe in different parties running different layers of government. But also there's a reason historically, China did not have a good experience for intergovernmental conflict. Historically, they could only have, it could only be one of the three situation. One is insubordination, meaning that rebellions of province against the center. Second is warlordism. If they may not be one single challenges, but everyone go on their own, so you end up having warlords in different places. And third worst is that some of these local warlords could be controlled by foreign power. So China basically did not want to deal with this, does not how to deal with this, even though it promised Hong Kong status quo to remain for 50 years. As Hong Kong democratized, China felt threatened, and eventually China just canceled off Hong Kong's autonomy. Today, Hong Kong increasingly looks like a mainland city. And the interesting part is that when Hong Kong was democratizing in the first, I think, 1997 to 2029, the first 27 years or so, in the early years of after this handover to China, the Democrats were basically see themselves as Chinese, but they were suppressed by the government, and this radicalized the local population. The younger generations of Democrats see themselves as Hong Kong people with an independent identity from China. They aim for Hong Kong independence, which of course would not be tolerated by China, but this is that resulted in a harsher crackdown. But this is what they see. They call Chinese as colonists. So this is how what we want to talk about is that failure in dealing with intergovernmental conflict could have much worse situation as well. China is in full control of Hong Kong, but it creates a very unimaginable challenge that is the independence movement for Hong Kong. Now, is this good or bad to have decentralization? You basically don't have a simple answer. Without decentralization, less veto players, then greater decisiveness. Decision can be made much faster. If you have more veto players, then more deliberations and more horse trading will become harder to change the status quo. So is decisiveness good for SDG? It depends on which one you look at. For SDG 16, peace, justice, and strong institution, yes. For SDG 17, partnership in the goals, likely so. But what about others SDG? That depends on whether the decision makers side with the SDG or not. Like what we've shown you just now with decarbonization. When the federal government is not in favor of climate actions, the state and the local governments in Americas were much more favor in many states. Ultimately, to think about all these choices in political system design, it boils down to two questions. Do you want to gamble or you want to buy insurance? A better example is like, do you want to buy lottery or you want to buy insurance? What it means is that you want to take the chance because some system, including whether it's authoritarianism and democracy, between majoritarian democracy and consensus democracy, between centralizations and decentralization, and later we should look at between majoritarian electoral system and proportional representation. All of this is about the same question. Do you want to take the chance or do you want to spread the risk? What do we mean by this? If you assume that your luck is good, then luck is good means that the people in the power will make the right decision, do the right thing, and they will they have the best judgment. Then an authoritarian, centralized, winner-takes-all system is probably better. But on the other hand, you're not so sure about the lucks you would have in life. Then maybe it's better to spread the risk. So for example, in this case, when you decentralize, you have multiple entry points to effect change. That's mean, in some cases, it could probably delay the outcome that you want. But in the worst scenario, it also gives you a chance to get something done. Now, this is what you should remember. The room for intergovernmental conflicts, unitary states, federation, confederation. Federalism, we talk about cell rule and share rule, historical context, overrepresentation of smaller and special states, decentralization, balance, trade-off, aspect, level. We also discussed in length between separatism and intergovernmental conflict and multiple entry points and decisiveness. We would have time to discuss about this, but this was, you can discuss in the group if you like. This is a question to ask. How should local government be organized? Should they be organized as a presidential government, meaning that you have a directly elected mayor and a separately elected council? So 2 elections, or just 1 elections. You elect the council and the council elect the mayor. This is indirectly elected, 1 election. That's a parliamentary system. Or unelected bureaucracy, bureaucracy or representative of the national or state government. Which would you prefer? We have run out of time, but I want to leave the last chance for people to see if you want to say anything about this question or you just have any comments or anything. Thank you. We go 1 round. Woon Sim. We didn't have you just now.
Okay.
Yeah. Right? I think I called you, but I didn't. Did I get you just now? I don't think
Yeah,
so.
yeah, yeah.
Oh.
You did.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Right. So, but anyway, do you have anything to say at the end of the lecture? You can answer the quiz question. Between the three, what would you like?
I would like an elected mayor.
Elected mayor. Okay,
Yeah.
where are you from?
PJ.
Okay, why would you like an unelected mayor? That's very
Sorry?
interesting. You want an unelected mayor.
Elected mayor.
Oh, elected mayor.
Yeah.
So directly elected or indirectly elected? Okay, indirectly elected means we are we copy and paste the existing structure at the federal and the state government. So you have a local councillor, you elect in the councillor, they elect among themselves to be the mayor. That's indirectly elected. Directly elected mayor means that, like American presidential election, you're going to choose between individual who to be a mayor. At the same time, you're going to have an elections for the councillor.
Prefer the direct one.
Okay, why?
Because they're supposed to, a mayor is supposed to serve the city and bring things, improve the city. So it should be someone that the citizens of the city chose to have faith that this person can do the duty right. Yeah, because sometimes, often not, we don't know who our mayor is. We
Right.
don't know their background. What is
Okay.
their strength and weaknesses? So yeah.
Thank you. There's one argument for having a mayor, as because a mayor has a direct mandate and therefore it can make difficult decisions like urban renewal. If you have a parliamentary system, there's a lot of horse trading. In many cases, we like this horse trading because it encourages compromises, but sometimes it may not be so effective in governance. Now, let's get countries where you have elected representative. So Aisha is still here? Aisha?
Yes, Prof.
Yes. In yours, where's your city?
Yeah.
Dumai, right? No, you're not from. Which is your city in Indonesia?
Balikpapan.
Balikpapan, right? Do you have a direct elections for mayor?
Yeah. Yes, we have.
You
Yeah.
choose mayor directly, right?
And
Because it's,
city, regional, and yeah.
right. You're happy with that?
I don't know what to say. Actually, I prefer the direct election because we know who's gonna rule the city, who's gonna rule the regional. But to be honest, I'm not really sure whether it's very direct or indirect because money speaks.
Okay. All right. So all system could corrupt. Mary.
Yeah.
We go very fast, and so we won't take longer. Yeah.
I would prefer the directly elected because you know the sentiments of the local people
Right.
and as well as what they need.
You live in Manila, right?
I'm in Guimaras, is a small island in the middle part of the country.
Which island?
Guimaras,
Divarat. Okay.
yes, very famous for white beaches.
Oh, wasn't that okay. Anyway, so you have a local elections for local mayor
Yes,
for
direct.
UNSDC?
Yes, very same as US, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, Malaysians, back to Malaysian. Saifuddin?
I prefer directly elected, bro. Yeah.
And for the same reason?
Yes.
Okay, next, let's get Kahan.
Just to try direct now and to see what changed.
And Kahan,
Because we have been,
no, go ahead.
we have experienced so many, the indirect, and we see how things go. So I don't know. I just feel like I'm so curious if we go for direct and what will happen then. Yeah.
Good for it. You know why? Because Sabah and Sarawak are not governed by the National Local Government Act. So you have your own I can't remember whether it's called enactment or ordinance. So you basically can have your own system. Push for it. Hawaii?
Hi, sir.
Yeah.
I would prefer it to be directly elected
Mm.
and with the simplicity of it. Things get simpler, less complicated.
Okay. How do you mean by simple?
If it's directly elected, then it also means that they have probably more aligned direction, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah. Or direct contact. And hence, hopefully, it will have less disparity in different states.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thanks. Novi Sena?
Prof. I prefer directly elected mayor.
Okay.
I think the most high-profile one was Mamdani, NYC.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
So
Great. Okay.
if we had an indirect election, they'd probably have another right-wing mayor.
Okay. Well, it depends. New York, anyway, we get a left-wing mayor. It's just how left. Yeah. It's a democratic country. Wai Chin?
Hawaii, I just
Sorry. I've called you already, right? I called you already.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry. Kitchen.
I would prefer a direct elected. Similar reasons, like at least the citizen can know about the person leaderships and the focus with the limited resources available, and for where they will focus be their benefits to the citizens.
Right. Have I missed out anyone? I've asked Woon Sim as well, right? So I think that's all. Thank you very much. And hopefully by next week, we'll give you the questions for your assessment 1 and assessment 2. Because there's an internal process that we have to get vetting and so on. And hope to see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you,
I
Prof.
haven't done you the video. I'll do that, but because that the editing take too much time because I repeated certain part. I had to find out which part to cut and to cut it short. Okay, all right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.